This is my John Deere 60. I like this tractor a lot for several reasons. One is that it used to be owned by my grandfather, and he gave it to me back in 1979. So I've owned this tractor 40 years now. That's longer than anybody else has owned it. And it'll be mine till the day I die. And what happens to it then, I don't really know. But it's pretty special to me because I used to sit on that seat right there along with my grandfather and cultivate corn back on his farm south of Lisbon, Iowa. It's got a 2-cylinder engine in it, and I think it's 350 cubic inches if I remember right, and it runs slow, and that's why this engine has basically ran 67 years without an overhaul. However, we are having some problems with the starter, and it's down underneath the tractor behind this flywheel cover, and a plate down on the bottom of the engine there. Probably can't see it, but anyway, we've got that work to do. One other reason I like this tractor so well is because I was born in 1952 just like this tractor was, so we're both 67 years old. Well, this tractor, I'm sure, has been started thousands and thousands of times over its 67-year lifespan. With the flywheel cover removed, you can see the ring gear that the starter engages in. And sometimes, the way this engine works, it's got 2 cylinders in it and about 175 cubic inches each cylinder, and they both come to the top of the compression cycle or exhaust cycle at the same time. And that's how it runs. So the crankshaft isn't staggered as far as I know. Both pistons are moving in synchrony with each other. And what this will effectively do is when you shut the engine off, it'll stop the flywheel in about the same place every time. And that would be down there at the bottom. And sometimes we won't look right underneath there, but sometimes what happens is these gears will get worn. Maybe 6 or 8 teeth of the gear will get worn, and then the starter won't want to engage anymore. But that's not what's going on here. The starter drive down there, you can see the teeth on the starter drive is bad, and I've witnessed that. We might set the camera on a tripod and let you see what's going on there. Okay, so I've got the camera on kind of a makeshift tripod. I'm going to get up on the tractor and step on the starter, and you can kind of see what's going on and why it doesn't want to work. Well, we've got to take it apart and fix it. Well, to get the starter out, it's not too big of a job really. You can start off by taking the flywheel cover off, and there's 3 or 4 bolts for that. One of them's right there. My father's already done that. Come up and disconnect the rod off of the starter pedal right there. It's pretty easy. You just pull a card or pin and push the pin out. That way it's disconnected on top. You get down underneath then. The lighting's probably not all that great, but there's a plate right here that covers the starter. My father's already removed that plate. So the next thing to do is to disconnect the power cord to it and the drive rod off of down here. Start off up on top by disconnecting the ground cable. On a John Deere system, it's actually the positive is the ground, so you disconnect the positive cable. You can see the wire right there, and it's grounded out right there. This negative cable is a direct route down to the starter down below, So you for sure want to get that disconnected to the starter. There's no solenoid on this tractor, it's just a mechanical switch. Okay, so I've got the ground disconnected up the battery, and you can see now that here's this wire right up here. That's the power wire coming down from the battery, and so that's got to be disconnected. And here's the other end of the I call it the switch pedal rod. That's got to be connected right there, or disconnected right there. Once that's done, then it's take these 3 cap screws out of the starter and then wiggle it out from inside, making sure that the thing doesn't drop and hit you in the head. So here's the starter up on the workbench. Here's a utility knife. You can kind of get an idea of how big that starter is. Weighs, I'm going to guess, about 40 pounds. It wiggled out fairly easily, but you want to be sure and not let it fall on you. What's going on is this part inside here is it's just worn out, I think, and was able to find a new one on the internet, Chinese made. I have a feeling it only cost about 11 bucks plus shipping, so 20 bucks got it here, and I'm ready to try to get it installed. First thing I'll do is just vacuum all the crap off of it and get it cleaned up a little bit, and then you've got to take it apart at this end here. 2 long cap screws just kind of hold the whole thing together. You can see one cap screw there and the boss right there where it threads into this part. So the front end of this thing's got to come off enough so that I can replace that. When you step on that starter pedal and it moves this arm right here, it does a couple different things. One is it pushes this plunger on the switch down that energizes the starter, and the other is that there's a little device that goes down into the starter, kind of like a clutch fork, and it pushes the starter drive out. So I have a feeling probably going to need to take that out as well and pull this out of the way, so I'll probably have to take that copper strap off as well to get this whole thing out of the way. Okay, so I take these 2 cap screws loose out of the back. They're pretty long. They came out easily, and the front end of the starter split off of the starter case very easily. I was surprised. You want to be careful when you do that, that you don't pull the armature this way. If you do, the brushes back here are going to fall off the commutator, and then you'd have to take this part of the starter loose and try to pull the brushes back to insert the armature and commutator back in where it goes. So just be careful with that you don't pull the armature that way in any way. So with that loose, I think the next thing to do is to take these screws out back here, and hopefully that'll allow me to pull that old starter drive out of there. Okay, so taking these 2 small screws out of those holes allows this part to come out. And one thing you'll be able to learn from my experiences a little bit, there's a bronze bushing in there, if you can see it or not, and that's taking most of the load off of this armature. It fits back in there, and then you get it back where it goes. You can see that wiggles a little bit. You know, if I had new bronze bushing, I'd probably get it installed in that part. It'd be good to do. So if you're going to do this job, maybe find yourself a bronze bushing before you take it apart. For what little this tractor gets used now, the tractor probably gets started maybe 30-40 times a year. I'm probably just going to put it back together, and if I ever get the starter apart again, I'll get that bronze bushing. So anyway, there's that. With that, this bolt that goes through this fork mechanism, we've got that out of the way, so that'll just rotate down, and there's a looks like a synthetic, or it's not steel for sure, thrust washer. Try to keep parts in relationship to each other so that we don't have problems putting it back together. With that done, this part will just come right out now. And That's the relationship that you've got there. So this part's not working well. We're going to replace it with that one. Well, I'm ready to put this back together. I've cleaned up the armature shaft, cleaned up the bronze bushings, oiled them a little bit, oiled that bushing there, oiled that bushing there, you can't see it. I put the new drive back in place, got the drive fork installed and bolted back up. But if you can look down that hole, you can see that things aren't in alignment very well. And that's just because there's a bunch of loose parts in there. That's the way it's meant to be. So what I'm going to do is I set this starter on some blocks, and it's vertical. I'm going to turn this part vertical and stick my screwdriver down that hole, and I can line up all the parts, and I can just drop it into place on that armature. So that's what I'm going to try now. Well, I tried my idea and it worked pretty well, so I'll take it back apart to show you what I did. There's that part right there. And what I did is I just took my little pinky and kind of stuck it up in there, pushed it around until I got everything in alignment, and then carefully dropped it back over the armature. What it was doing was hanging up on these splines right there. There's a little dowel right there that lines up the case. And so there. It actually went better the first time than the second time, but anyway, it's all together now. So I've been trying to stick the starter back up in the hole here, and it's just not working. So I pulled it out, analyzed it a little bit, and what happens is this copper strap that carries the power to the switch right here, and this little arm that pushes the switch down, those two things right there have to come through this hole right up in here. Hard to see, and what happens is with this switch arm in the down position, it won't go through that hole. So I've connected a wire to it and ran it through the hole. And I think what I've got to do is get that starter close to where it goes, and then give that wire a pull and pull that actuator arm through this hole up behind the flywheel, if that makes sense.